Hi, good morning. Seeing some people jump in. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar. We'll be featuring Western Power's Project Jupiter, along with some key presentations from project partners from UNSW and Rennie Advisory. We'll just let some more people join before we kick off. Okay. All right, brilliant. I think we can begin. We'll let some more people trickle in, but we'll do some introductions and high-level overview to begin with. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. This is a showcase webinar featuring Western Power's Project Jupiter, and we'll be getting some really interesting deep dive presentations from the project team, along with project partners from UNSW and Rennie Advisory. My name is Maya Resnick. I'm the DER Knowledge Sharing Manager here at ARENA, and I'll be moderating today's session. And the purpose of this webinar is to really provide an update on the first 6 months of Project Jupiter. This is an exciting flagship project that we'll be showcasing as it provides a pathway to full DER participation. It is also ARENA's largest DER project to date, which is really exciting. And we'll be getting 3 project presentations from the teams who will share how these learnings from the project can really support Australia's integration, transition, and inform important work underway, both in the DER roadmap over in Western Australia, as well as the national CER roadmap. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands and waterways that we are gathering here from. I'm here meeting on Eora country of the Gadigal people, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Now, to cover off on some housekeeping, we've got a nice full day planned ahead. So this webinar will be recorded and published on ARENA's Knowledge Sharing Bank. A quick reminder to use the Q&A function in the chat. There's a little screenshot there, but use the Q&A function and please address your questions when you can to a particular presenter where appropriate. You can also upvote questions. That will be great for us to use if you'd like to see questions get answered. And we'll try to prioritize highly voted options. And know that we'll be dedicating time at the end of each presentation for Q&As. We'll also, joining us here today are some project panelists. So to really help answer your questions from different perspectives and different agencies, I'd like to introduce expert panel comprised of Taryn Brearley, General Manager at Distributed Energy Resources, or DER, for Western Australian Department of Energy and Economic Diversification. We've got Rebecca Hargrave, Head of DER and OT Technologies at Synergy, and Jean-Philippe, Principal Analyst of DER at AEMO. And we've got Andrew Blaver, Head of Distributed Energy Transition at Western Power. And here's what we have in store for today. Firstly, we'll start with a presentation from Mike Bradford, Program Director of Project Jupiter at Western Power. Mike will provide an overview of the project and the key work streams underway. And after Mike's presentation, there'll be an opportunity to ask him questions before we switch over to hear from the project partners, who I will introduce as we go along. So as some high-level overview, every good DER webinar presentation starts with an ISP chart. So we know we're heading into a high DER future where integrating these assets will be critical. More than 1 in 3 Australian households have rooftop solar. And with the recent cheaper home battery program, along with EV uptake, household DER will play a key role in unlocking significant economic benefits for all energy consumers. Over the past 4 years, ARENA has funded over $45 million into DER integration projects. Project Jupiter, following on from the successful Project Symphony trial, is one of 5 key integration projects helping to pave the way for Australia's DER integration transition. Today, we'll be hearing how, despite being delivered over in Western Australia and on the Swiss, which looks a little bit different, Project Jupiter has the potential to inform and accelerate activities here in the East Coast and work underway in the national CER roadmap. So before we begin, what do we mean by market integration trials? These are end-to-end solutions, or VPP projects that examine different ways of meeting 4 core DER functions across market and network services, and while adhering to local network constraints. All under the guise of having to package these products and services into offerings and customer offerings that really meet the expectations and energy needs of consumers. Without further delay, I'd like to introduce Mike Bradford. And Mike, over to you for an overview on Project Jupiter.
Thanks, Maya, and good morning, everybody, and thanks for this opportunity. Project Jupiter is a great initiative that we're very delighted to be working with ARENA on, and I'd welcome the opportunity to provide you with a bit of an overview. Maya has spoken briefly around the impact of DER at a national level, and it's worth just focusing a little bit on the Swiss, the Southwest interconnected system in terms of that context for our project in particular. And these are, I guess, are the key elements of growth in DER that we're observing in the next few years. And photovoltaics on rooftop solar, that growth is looking at adding almost 2 gigawatts of additional capacity in the next 10 years. And whilst that graph probably reflects a maturing penetration, I'll come back to that in a little moment. And of course, the opportunities and challenges that all of these things provide are contributing to new system low loads, but also the opportunity to harness that for the benefit of the system as a whole. Moving into battery storage, we can see that whilst there's a significant growth forecast, and again I'll come to that in a moment, that the opportunity is to move from passive benefits to the benefits of orchestration, which is really the goal of the project. And over on the right, whilst the growth of electric vehicles hasn't probably hit forecasts in recent years, the expectation that is will grow significantly. Just a little bit of context around each of these for Western Australia in particular. It represents a more maturing kind of market. That still means 3,000 houses a month are being added in terms of scale, so it's still a large scale. And the battery one there, that is taken from the AEMO ESU from this year, and that really doesn't take into account the recently implemented federal and state battery rebate schemes. And so at the beginning of this year, we were seeing about 6 megawatts a month of residential batteries being added to our network. In the first month of operations of the scheme, that grew to 90 megawatts. So it's a significant growth. All of this means that the growth in DER is something that proposes great challenges in terms of the impacts on how we manage our system, but a great opportunity in terms of harnessing that for the benefit of our system and our communities as a whole. The West Australian Government and the partners in Jupiter have been focused on this for several years, and through 2018, 19 and 20, there was a deliberate effort to focus on energy transition and how we deal with the challenges of DER and also harness the benefits. And that really started with the publication by the West Australian Government of a DER roadmap in 2020, which laid out a landscape to 2025 of actions and opportunities for Western Australia. And it is that document that has provided the policy and other guidance that the project partners have been harnessing. And that led to Project Symphony, which was an initiative in 2021 and 22, directly as a result of the DER roadmap, that proved that virtual power plants are technically feasible in the Swiss. And so that was a great opportunity. That was further developed in 2023 with Project Encore, which enhanced the performance of VPPs. And that's led us to today, which with Project Jupiter, which was officially launched in January of this year, which is going to take all of the learnings from Symphony, Encore, and is an action from the DER roadmap to implement at scale virtual power plants in the Swiss. And it's a 3-year program that will take us to 2028. Ultimately, the objective of Project Jupiter is to realise the full potential of DER in Western Australia's energy transition by developing Australia's first energy system and market where DER is safely and securely integrated at scale for the benefit of the community. It's an ambitious program, and it is any program that has innovation and challenge is innovation and change is challenging, but has some clear objectives in terms of all new solar and battery installations will be visible, compliant, and capable of participating in a virtual power plant. There'll be greater choice for consumers to participate in virtual power plants, but there'll also be other benefits. Aggregated DER will be part of the energy system, providing network support services and participating in the market more generally. As I said, any program of change and innovation is challenging. It's even more challenging when you involve multiple partners across multiple agencies. And as a consequence, we've got a strong governance and collaboration framework that will drive the program. Across the top, we've got our project partners, which are the funding from ARENA, the key partners of Western Power as lead for Project Jupiter, along with Synergy, AEMO, and Energy Policy WA are the key partners. We have core research partners supporting, and you'll hear from one of them today, but also supporting that's how the program will be evaluated, but also social science research from the University of New South Wales and Curtin University. We've got a strong steering committee that has representation from each of the project partners, a dedicated project management office that will coordinate all the activities of the program, and a clear focus on delivery streams across technical streams. That is the build that is required to support delivering DER at scale in Western Australia, a customer stream which is focused on perceptions of virtual power plants and the product offering for customers to get greater value from their DER assets, and of course the value stream, which is represents how DER will participate in the market. All underpinned by each of those streams requires support and change from a policy and regulation framework. So we've got a strong governance and collaboration framework that supports us. The project started in January of this year. And the first phase, which we completed in June, represents project initiation. And in that time, we've established a formal project governance structure and established the project management office, and all the partners have now stood up their capability to deliver the project. We've also delivered some key research activities, the vision and impact pathway, which will track and evaluate how the program is participating. You'll hear from Danny Alexander, who's led that work in a moment, but also the National Alignment Report, which was an assessment of what are the opportunities for the WEM and the NEM to both share and learn from each other in terms of the developments of DER or CER, in each of those environments. And again, we're going to hear from Rennie Advisory, who've provided support in developing that national alignment report shortly. One of the reports that we delivered as part of project initiation was a lessons learnt report, and some of the key reflections on that are just highlighted on this slide. When the project was initially being in development, we weren't anticipating a state or a federal battery scheme. They were announced really at the start of the program as we were getting running, and they will absolutely rapidly boost the uptake of DER in the Swiss, and we're already seeing that, which is great for the program as a whole. But it has required us to be very agile and adaptable in terms of some of the streams of work that were planned for later in the program have had to be accelerated significantly, and we've had to accommodate that at the same time. But on the whole, it provides a great opportunity in terms of the overall benefits of the project. Another one of the challenges that we've been dealing with is how exactly DER will participate in the capacity in other markets. And we're now working through a range of options for that, which will lead us to achieving the overall vision for the program. You're going to hear from the National Alignment Report where there are opportunities for national harmonisation, and there are both learnings and opportunities to share information between the WEM and the NEM, and that's something that's obviously ARENA's very focused on, but as a program we are also. All up, as I mentioned, this is a complex piece of work that involves innovation and change across a very diverse group of partners. But we have a strong foundation of collaboration built over several years now from the DER roadmap, Project Symphony and Project Encore, and that the strength of that collaboration means that the partners are able to deal with the challenges in their stride, and we've got a strong framework for taking this forward. Where to for the next period of time for Project Jupiter? It is a 3-year program. We've just completed milestone 1 in June of this year. The project is planned to finish in 2028, and where we're focused between now and early in 2026 is we're moving into doing the high-level end-to-end technical systems design, which is all of the technology that is required to support DER at scale that the partners require. We're absolutely focused on also developing the customer engagement participation pathways. In part, that has been both challenged and a great opportunity by the battery schemes that have been announced, and that we now have VPP products already in place in Western Australia, and so that creates a great opportunity to learn from that and to enhance them further. And one of the key lessons that we've learned is around a VP virtual power plant awareness and education is a bit of a gap that we're focused on. We do have a couple of key challenges, and they're listed under the priorities. We're still working on the pathways of how DER is going to participate in the capacity in other markets to make sure we optimise the value that is delivered to the system as a whole. And pardon me, and one of the, as I mentioned, the improving consumer knowledge and awareness of virtual power plants. There is a clear gap in the community's understanding around the benefits and the opportunities, and so that's something we're absolutely focused on. We have a clear program of work, great opportunities ahead to achieve our vision and objective, but some significant challenges that we have to move through as well. Thanks, Maya.
Thanks so much, Mike. Great to get a little overview of Project Jupiter and really just signposting the long road ahead, because we're really just at the beginning right now. And the work that's been done so far is really great, just to be able to put some context and where it sits relevant to other work underway. So couple questions here in the chat. We've got one here from why does WA refer to this as DER? And I think, just to come back, I think, ARENA uses these interchangeably, but DER has been something that just really encompasses a lot of resources, both customer and kind of business scale. So we've seen them as interchangeable distributed energy resources or consumer energy resources. But I'll pass over to you, Mike, if you want to answer that question too from WA's perspective.
Thanks, Mike. I might ask Andrew he's primed, ready to answer this one.
Sure. So DR for us includes the behind the meter or customer owned energy resources. But DR for us is very much community scale. So network connected batteries. We've got, about 18 what we call community or network connected batteries, which are DR. Some of which we're working with market participants will actually be participating in the capacity market with their capacity over the next couple of years. So we do differentiate between DR and CR, but tomato, we're comfortable with either. But we do also tend to call consumer energy resources just that. But as a broader overarching definition, DR does include a lot of network connected LV and even MV assets.
Thanks, Andrew. I think many share that view as well. It really is an umbrella term but CER definitely sits in there. We also have another question here. Do you envision the role of synchronous generation in the future? Are we aiming for zero synchronous generation in the near future? That's kind of a double-edged question there. But are we thinking that VPPs are going to, exclude the need for synchronous generation? Is kind of how I read that question.
Well, I think one thing we're certain of is that we will be moving to more inverter-based generation, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. There's plenty of time and still a strong role for synchronous generators. We are seeing a lot more DR come into distribution. In fact, Mike mentioned sort of low load periods. When we do have a low load period in the Swiss, we do see the entire distribution network as a net generator. But we've still got a significant transmission build. We've got significant load still to come onto the network. So long way to go yet for synchronous generators and the role that they will play.
Thanks, Andrew. Any other questions? Just looking through the chat here, I might include my own if we've got space for it. Mike or Andrew, we kind of listed some of the key priorities there and some of the challenges ahead. Just wanting to, where did we get to in Project Symphony and with project partners Synergy on board? What's going to be different? How are we going to educate differently? How are we going to package the products differently? I know this is in the next milestone, so just signposting whatever you're able to share at this point around how product development is progressing from Project Symphony and what's going to be kind of realized here in Project Jupiter. And maybe a bit more on that kind of the full potential or the full pathway to both market and network services, since that's really key about this project.
Thanks, Maya. I might start and then get Andrew to fill in. Project Symphony and Encore were really around testing were virtual power plants and harnessing the benefits of DER technically feasible, and that was well proven, but at a pilot scale, and so that proved the technology. It gave us some insights into the value that was on offer, and so taking those learnings, Jupiter is aimed at implementing at scale for the entire Swiss those benefits for of DER for consumers, but also the system as a whole, and that requires quite a different focus, where we're touching live markets, we're touching consumer assets at scale. And so we have to make sure that the technology, the processes, the systems, the regulation and the policy, as well as the product development, is all suitable for operating at the full scale in a mature environment. And so that requires quite a different way of thinking about how we're going about the program, and also probably has some greater challenges in terms of bringing a much greater community and group of stakeholders along on the journey. And so the emphasis on education becomes really important. But I might give Andrew, who worked on each of the prior projects, an opportunity to add to that.
Sure, and also we've got Synergy, Rebecca Hargrave, on more specific product-related questions. But I think, May, you focused quite a bit on products there. In Symphony, we had to create some sense of value for joining a VPP. And the way we did that was to help customers purchase a battery so they could get 50% off a battery. And in exchange, we would orchestrate that battery under different scenarios. Jupiter is about what's the actual value of orchestration, what's the actual value that you get from participating in a VPP, either to provide a network support service to us, Western Power, to reduce peak in a way that we don't have to augment the network any further. The game changer really is storage connecting to the distribution network. Load control, energy efficiency, energy conservation, all incrementally can add and can contribute to reducing peak. But storage as a firm orchestratable asset, where we have a product now where for 30 times a year, we will orchestrate that asset, and customers now get real value. Right now, a customer will get either 3 or 10 cents to export their energy to the network. But by joining the VPP, they'll get 70 or 80 cents for having that battery orchestrated per unit of energy that's utilized that way. And we orchestrate the battery so it lasts 4 or 5 or 6 hours, and that the battery's not depleted over 2 hours. So that orchestration really is the method by which we get battery storage to do a lot of heavy lifting for network support services, as well as participate in the market at a system level. So ultimately, the products that support that at scale is really where Jupiter is going. And Symphony was a pilot. It tested the technical, the value, and the customer attitudes. We've absolutely learned from that. Symphony's final report had some 18 recommendations. Jupiter really is looking at those recommendations and implementing most of them, because those recommendations had to answer one question: what is required in Western Australia or in the Swiss to enable VPP participation at scale? And by implementing those recommendations through Jupiter, we expect to achieve that objective. I don't know if Synergy want to add to that in terms of more definition on products, etc.
Thanks, Andrew. You did a really great job of the description. I think just to add that Synergy is really excited at this opportunity for customers to be able to kind of unlock their participation and bring them in as prosumers. I think Andrew's described the product construct very well. I think it is really what now needs to sit around that is some scaffolding around education and engagement to help them understand what exactly is a VPP, what are those benefits for participation, why should they get engaged and involved. Obviously, this is not a construct for all customers, but I think increasing that sort of standard level of understanding and energy literacy is only going to unlock more opportunities both for the system and for customers as well.
Thanks, Rebecca, and thanks, Andrew. We probably have time for one more question, a quick one here from John O'Leak. So we've got here, thanks, Mike, great overview. Are you guys exploring the need for consumer protection within VPPs? For example, are you looking at ways to improve protection for consumers and balancing the power imbalance between consumers, retailers, VPP aggregators, and DNSPs. So quite a broad question if anyone wants to tackle that.
I think Andrew is well placed to start.
Actually, let's make this a team effort. Let's go to EPO if we can, Taryn, because customer protections, as Taryn knows better than anyone, is part of the consideration for this program.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. It's essential customer protection for this whole thing to work going forward. One thing that WA has done is it's introduced some legislation recently. I think it's called the Alternative Energy Services legislation, and it basically enables us to set up codes for different kinds of electrical products. The first two ones are for people in embedded networks, so not dealing directly with retailers, and the second one is for things like where you're basically loaning your roof space or financial arrangements with people providing you solar on your roof and whatnot. But one of the things we're going to do with Jupiter is add another code, which basically gets the VPP products to give customers the comfort that they will be dealt with fairly and reasonably. And that's part of the program. So yeah, is the answer.
Thank you, Taryn. Well, in interest of time, we might need to move along, but these are great questions. And again, please feel free to look at the Knowledge Bank and check out the Project Jupiter reports. And there is a link to the project team if we don't answer all of your questions here today. So next up on the dance card, we've got Danny Alexander, CEO at UNSW Energy Institute. Welcome, Danny. We're very much looking forward to getting the overview of the Vision and Impact Pathway report. Over to you.
Thank you, Maya. I'll just let it go to the next slide. And just, is this the opening slide? Can you see the Vision and Impact Pathway slide?
Yeah, Danny, I can see on my end, maybe it hasn't come through for you, but we've got the title page here now, and happy to jump over to Schumacher whenever you're ready.
Okay, great. Well, it hasn't updated on my screen, so I'll just signpost the slides that I'm going through. But really, I just wanted to say first how delighted I am to be here today, and thank you for the invitation to be able to present this work on the Vision and Impact Pathway report. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the Bidjigal people, who are the traditional custodians of the lands that I'm calling from here today at the Kensington campus of the University of New South Wales. For those who don't know me, I'm the CEO of the UNSW Energy Institute, which represents the depth and the breadth of energy research and technology at the University of New South Wales. One of our 3 strategic objectives at the Institute, first and foremost, is a consumer-led energy transformation, which is why I'm so pleased to be here and supporting Project Jupiter as one of the best examples in Australia, I believe, of innovation with regards to consumer energy resources, or DER, as we were talking about the definitions earlier. The reason I'm so passionate about a consumer-led energy transformation is because I believe, and we can go maybe to the next slide, Maya, I believe that small is beautiful. I think we're really privileged in Australia to have an energy.
Sorry to interrupt, Danny. I think the slides have frozen for the majority of the audience. Maya, if we could maybe just try resharing the screen deck. Just want to make sure everyone can see what you've presented.
Of course. Happy to wait. No rush from this end.
Apologies for the technical gremlins, everybody. They always seem to creep in. Maya, are you still with us?
I know that we don't have a lot of time, so I might keep going, and I can
you go right ahead.
Signpost some of the slides as we go through, and I think they may be shared afterwards, or the recording will be, and hopefully there's a way we can circulate the content of that afterwards. So what you would have seen on this slide is a quote here, a favorite quote of mine from a book that I love called Small is Beautiful. And the reason why I love Small is Beautiful is because I feel like we're really privileged in Australia to have an energy transformation that's being powered by people. So as most of us know here in the audience, because you're here at this webinar, we're leading the world in the uptake of consumer energy resources, or distributed energy resources more broadly. The quote that's up here, it says, from Schumacher, that all really important innovations and changes normally start from tiny minorities of people who use their creative freedom. And I feel like this really embodies our energy transformation, because we are being, here we go, here is the quote, because we are being, fantastic, everyone can see that. We are blessed with the opportunity to be able to be working with everyone in Australia who are literally buying into the transformation that we have underway. It also resonates with me in the experience of having worked in the space of innovation for distributed energy assets for a decade. So if I risk again, maybe to go to the next slide and see if that works. I'm going to build on what Mike has presented, and Maya as well, just to, I guess, highlight the opportunity that exists here. And I think, again, most people in the audience would see this, but really, when it comes to our world-leading capability in the consumer side of the energy transformation, AEMO in its latest ISP in 2024 predicts that, by 2050, a quarter of our generation mix is actually going to become from these distributed assets. This means that up to close to 80% of homes are going to be powered by rooftop solar, which is fourfold as much as we have today. We already have a lot. A third of households have rooftop solar. The schemes that Mike alluded to that have been at the state and the federal government level are racing forward with the uptake of batteries. But really, the opportunity here is that we have people powering our energy transition. And how can we harness the power of that resource to make our energy transformation better for everyone? So if I go to the next slide, really the overarching question that my research seeks to answer, and now through my role in Project Jupiter and from Project Symphony before that, is really, what will it take to make DER orchestration as a term, but really this people-powered energy transformation mainstream? So this here is a slide that is not very pretty, and I appreciate that, but I think it's functional in the sense that it frames the way that this research operates, the way that my role in the project is to evaluate the progress of Project Jupiter, or its contribution to the progress of DER orchestrations, technology maturity, but also market maturity. The framework is structured in an end-to-end way, or a life cycle way, where I consider all of the stages of DER orchestration and then have a rubric that assesses the technology and the market maturity for each of those stages. So I'm not going to go into all of this in detail, but I've just extracted a couple of points from each of these stages of orchestration to show, I guess, a representation of what this might look like from when it is mainstreamed, or it's business as usual in all jurisdictions. So at the start of the life cycle of orchestration, this is identifying the opportunity for DER to be orchestrated, whether that's through the visibility of the DER, and I saw a question of that in the chat, or the network mapping that may need to be undertaken to identify the opportunity for DER to provide network services. There is the value proposition to consumers, which are at the heart of this framework, but also the opportunity of leveraging DER to provide services, the engagement of those consumers, and from, say, an aggregator or a retailer's perspective, the acquisition of those customers into, say, a VPP, then the multiple technical stages that we go through to develop and install, integrate, operate, maintain, and orchestrate those assets, all the way to the end-to-end transactions for the services they're providing. And finally, and this is new for those who did follow my work in Symphony, a stage related to reflection and retention. So at this point, I might go to the next slide because I think it shows it in a more visually appealing way. But you can see here that the life cycle or end-to-end framework here really reflects what we need to do across all of those stages of orchestration. And this is at the heart of the evaluation framework that I'm implementing through Project Jupiter, where we look at both the technology and the market maturity factors, which I'll talk to in a moment. Again, I just wanted to highlight that this 8th stage here, again, for those who did follow my work in Project Symphony, the 8th stage is new, and it's been brought in to reflect feedback from the work in Project Jupiter that it needed to better reflect the full customer journey. And it includes, I guess, an element of the service itself, reflecting on how well those assets have provided services, but also the retention of consumer in the broader ambition that is VPPs or orchestration. This approach, again, was used successfully to assess the contribution that Project Symphony made to both technology and market maturity of DER integration and orchestration. And we're expanding that now to, ideally by the end of the project, be one of the best longitudinal analyses of DER innovation in Australia. So on that point, I might go to the next slide. Take a breath. And just signpost the report itself and what you can expect if you haven't had an opportunity to read this output of the project. So the first stage of my work in the evaluation of Project Jupiter is to present a vision and an impact pathway report, which has 2 purposes. The first is to capture the collective vision that's workshopped with the stakeholders involved in Symphony in the context of the suite of DER integration and orchestration projects. The second purpose is to outline an impact pathway that, again, reflects the mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive framework for the life cycle across both technology and market maturity. I'll now go to the next slide to talk about that in a little bit more detail. Maybe I'll go one more, if that's all right. That's great. Just to talk a little bit more about some improvements to the framework itself for those who may like to compare the 2 across Symphony and Jupiter. So the impact pathway looks at essentially that the activities are undertaken in Jupiter and the outputs of the project, how they lead to outcomes and how that has real impact to the market, society as a whole. The metrics that underpin this impact pathway, as I've been alluding to, are those of technology maturity and market maturity. The technology maturity metrics draw heavily on the TRL, or the technology readiness levels, that many of you would be familiar with. It was established by NASA a very long time ago. It's been leveraged by many agencies, including ARENA. The market maturity metrics in Project Symphony really drew down heavily on the commercial readiness index of ARENA. And in Project Jupiter, this has now been expanded with new work that has been undertaken with the US Department of Energy and their adoption readiness levels. What I would say there is I think that ARENA's commercial readiness index has done a great job of capturing most of these factors, or risk dimensions as they're called, in the ARL framework for the US Department of Energy. But there were certain elements, particularly those that reflect some of the consumer factors to adoption, that are now reflected in the matrix associated with market maturity. So if I can go back one slide to the to the report itself to again signpost what you can expect. The report is structured in such a way where the vision is outlined in line with, I think, what Mike has presented today. The impact pathway is explained in more detail if what I've said today needs a little bit more depth. And then there is a preliminary analysis or a baseline analysis of the current and the expected levels of both technology and market maturity at the end of Project Jupiter. And I'll spend a bit of time with that before we go to questions. So if we move forward 2 slides, that'll take us to the baseline analysis of the expected contribution that Project Jupiter is anticipated to make to these 2 facets of maturity of DER orchestration and integration. On the left, you'll see here the way that it's structured. This is presenting the technology maturity progress that's expected for Project Jupiter. And on the right, you'll see market maturity. The way to read these radar diagrams is through the lines that expand over time. So the inside line for both of those diagrams was the assessment or the baseline assessment that was undertaken at the beginning of Project Symphony in 2021, which I think is an excellent reference point. You'll see here there's an asterisk there because, as I mentioned, the framework has been expanded to include this 8th stage of reflection and retention that wasn't undertaken at that first stage. So that's why there's a gap there. And then the middle line where this stage was assessed is an assessment of the level of both technology and market maturity at the end of Project Symphony and at the beginning of Project Jupiter. So that's where we are now. We're at the blue line. The green line, which is the outermost line in both cases, is the expected level of technology and market maturity at the end of Project Jupiter. So what, given the documents and the work that's been undertaken to date, projects us to move forward by January 2028, as Mike outlined in his presentation. And I'll spend a little bit of time just going through those 2 points. Firstly, with technology maturity on the next slide. The overarching message for technology maturity is that Project Jupiter really is expected to progress these metrics to extremely close to the technologies being fully developed. Essentially, as Mike said, Project Symphony did a lot of work in this space to progress the technology maturity of DER integration and orchestration, and Project Jupiter is expected across all of the stages of the life cycle to achieve what will be a TRL level of between 8 to 8.5, where 9 is technologically mature. The furthest progress is expected in 2 stages, the first being stage 1, which is the DER visibility and opportunity mapping. So you can see that as the top level there. And I noticed that I think it was Luciano who has a question here around the specific levers and policies that are being used around DER visibility. And you can interrogate the report that's published there. And I tried to get the page, I think it's page 36, which includes references to the implementation of a visibility framework. The second stage that has the furthest progress is stage 6, which is the orchestration of DER, given that it is expected that platforms will be implemented for the aggregator, the DSO, and the DMO. In terms of risks to achieving these expected levels, obviously we don't know what is going to happen in the future all the time, but there have been some items that have been identified that could be a barrier to achieving those expected levels that are outlined in the analysis. Those that are for stage 3 and 4 relate to the resources that are required for training, development, and maintenance. For those of us that have been involved in DER innovation projects, I think it's safe to say that in many projects, this is the part where it comes to the upskilling of, say, installers or being able to move things into business as usual. In other stakeholders, operations, this is the part that can be underestimated and can require more resources than is originally anticipated. So that is highlighted there, given the experience through previous projects. There's also a question, I know one was answered around consumer protections. This is also a risk that's identified to achieving the expected level, particularly of retention of consumers into VPPs on that 8th stage of the framework. If we are not able to achieve those, or if consumer protections are insufficient, if I were to frame it in that way, then there is obviously a risk that we won't be able to retain people to continue to participate. I know I've only got a couple of minutes left, so I'll go to market maturity now, which is the next slide. The overarching message for market maturity is that even that there is going to be significant progress across most of the levels with regards to market maturity. And at the end of Project Jupiter, there's an expectation that there will still be significant work to do in order for this to become mainstream. I think Mike also said that well when he, explained that this is a real focus, but what you'll see is across all but 2 of the stages, there's expected to be at least 2 levels of progress towards market maturity, which essentially embeds an inherent uncertainty when you're making such large progress over a short period of time. So that's been flagged in the early assessment. However, what I would say as well, that there are some areas that are making some significant progress compared to where we have been, including, and I might just highlight this one point around the value proposition. This progress, and you'll see it was one of the areas which was at a lower stage at the outset of the project, but is at one of the higher stages, if not the highest stage at the end of the project. The reason why the progress is so dramatic in this one is because there are expected to be commercial products that will be viable both through the aggregator in Synergy, but also third-party aggregators as well. And I think that there's a point there from Alan here, and that might be relevant there. If you're looking to understand a little bit more about that factor, I think you can look at page 38 of the report, which delves into a little bit more detail around the value proposition. Of course, I'd love to go into every element in depth, but I think I need to round out now. And so I might go to my final slide. Just to close out with maybe a point that Mike mentioned, but coming back to the original why I guess I'm involved and why I'm passionate about this area. This really is a consumer-centric energy future. This is really about the consumer-centric energy future. But as Mike mentioned, and what maybe I've shared in some ways through going into the framework of assessment in a little bit more detail, it's also inherently complex in the back end. I think it's really important to recognise and tackle the complexity in the back end, but in the front end, when we're talking about a consumer-centric energy future, I think it's really important to go back to this point that Schumacher also makes, that it takes certain flair and real insight to make things simple again. So when we're working with people in our consumer-centric energy future, I feel like this is extremely important work that we're all doing here today to make things simple for everyone and a better outcome for our system and people as a whole. So thank you for the opportunity to present.
Thank you so much, Danny. You've got lots of virtual claps here coming through and some hearts as well. So that's always nice. Beautiful quote, and really relevant for this discussion in terms of, before we had cell phones, what do? We had to write things down, and now we're kind of at this like converging, technology and tech and products and services and subscriptions, but the actual hardware coming together. And so now it's just such an easy part of our life, and similar with DER, CER. Lots of different questions here, and I might just also, fun to have a little tech hiccup. So I might just reshare the slides from my end. Thanks for whoever jumped in while my Wi-Fi was out having a bit of fun. Let's see here. I'm going to reshare.
Back to you, Maya. It's all yours.
Thank you so much. Is that JP?
Yes.
Thanks. Thanks for saving the day. Panelists that save the day is great. So we've got a couple questions here, Danny. We'll just briefly touch on, I think this one is a little bit, I think, touching on some of that adoption readiness that's really new to, the way that we're measuring and evaluating project success. This one just came up and I thought, it's an interesting angle relating to the state battery subsidy, and we might want to open it up to other panelists. But do you have any response to the media reports that the uptake of WA state battery subsidy is being constrained by the need for a hybrid inverter? Is that accurate, or is there an education issue? Wanting to put that out maybe broader than just Danny to see if there's, Rebecca.
Sure, I might just, I'm happy to support on the question, but given that it's state government rebate, it's probably best that Epworth take this one. But I'm here if you need me, Taryn.
Oh, okay, thank you. Look, it's a really good point. It's kind of interesting to see Danny talking about industry learning, and I guess there's been a bit of industry learning on a week-by-week basis over the last couple of months as we rolled out the rebate, which is going really well. Big bump in systems. That hybrid issue, the way to solve it is to make options available to consumers, and basically Synergy's building out its list of batteries, what they can talk to, its solar systems and what they can talk to, its gateway devices. And that's going to be the solution that is making the options available to consumers so they can choose the best product for themselves. So I'm kind of saying, yes, it's a thing, but we're working past it.
Thanks, Taryn. Yeah, it's surely I'm sure there'll be more communications and more clarity as we go along. It is, we're learning together. I will move along. It's a question of, again, touching on the performance and monitoring and evaluation framework, but this kind of relates to that. So what are the key performance and value indicators to reflect success of Project Jupiter? So Danny, again, you've put together a really nice life cycle framework and, map that across the TRL and CRI and the adoption readiness. But how does NCESS contribute to it? I don't know the acronym, so maybe Danny, if you do, that would be great. Yes. But otherwise,
Of course, and happy to answer that question. So in terms of the specific KPIs or the indicators or metrics I think I've been talking about, they're all available in the report under what the last appendices that relate to the final assessment matrices. So one's called Final Assessment Matrix Technology Maturity, one is called Final Assessment Matrix Market Maturity, and you can see exactly what are those indicators, essentially what are the stages that need to be achieved to meet each of those levels, whether it's technology levels or whether it's market levels. When it comes to NCESS, I think you'll find that comes through in multiple stages. So I think it comes through in terms of the valuation. So what is the value for providing that service? In the orchestration, can it be used to provide that service? And also, I think at the transactions point, are you paid for that service? That may be actually an oversimplification, and someone else might want to jump in on that particular point. But I just thought in terms of the framework and how that's addressed, that's the way that it's approached. Maybe Andrew?
Yeah, just to reiterate that a very valuable outcome of Jupiter will be aggregated customer assets via a virtual power plant are providing a network support service via NCESS, Non-Co-Optimised Essential System Services here in Western Australia. And early indications of success are that we're about to let 5 contracts for network support services where a combination of customer assets and network connected assets will be reducing peak in 5 different locations. That's starting this summer. But under Jupiter, we're looking at a sort of a substation level NCESS, where a combination of network connected and a significant aggregation of customer-owned batteries will come to the fore to produce a very large NSS or network support service as a key indicator of value for the program.
Thanks for that, Andrew. Well, we are running along nicely on our agenda here, but I will need to pass over to our last presenter. And thank you again, Danny. It's really valuable framework. And again, we've followed along since Project Symphony, really a valuable way of just being able to measure through that radon graph and be able to track progress. So we'll be following along until 2028. And thanks for that framework. It's really helpful. So moving along to our last presentation for today, we've got Gary Eisner from Rennie Advisory, and who will be giving us a nice overview of the National Alignment Report that Rennie put together over the last really 6 months. It was a lot of consultation. I got to come along to a lot of those discussions, but really broad consultation with industry stakeholders. So I'll pass it over to Gary.
Thanks, Maya. Good morning, everyone. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we all meet throughout Australia today. For those who don't know me, as Maya said, I'm Gary Eisner. I'm an Associate Director here with Rennie. I've been with Rennie for around 3.5 years now, working across various energy and regulatory problems, including DER/CER integration. I'll probably mostly just use DER for brevity though today. Prior to Rennie, I was at AEMO in the reg team there, working on Project Symphony, and so worked with a few of you on that. And I've been in and around the energy sector for around almost 20 years now. Next slide, please. So this talk is really, as we said, focused on the National Alignment Report, which Rennie compiled earlier this year on behalf of Western Power and the broader Project Jupiter team. The premise of the report really is that there's both a need and opportunities for alignment between Project Jupiter and the CER roadmap. And our job is to identify if this is true, and if so, where those opportunities lie. Next, sorry, that's the right slide. What we found through the research that we conducted was that there are definitely opportunities to collaborate across the NEM and WA, and that in doing so we'll avoid risks of fragmentation, varying standards, less competition, and ultimately increased costs for consumers. And the outcome of all those things, if they were to come to fruition, is that we get a decrease in social license, which is the opposite outcome than what we want. Next slide. So I won't dwell on this slide. We've seen some of it represented already. The really just tells us what the task is, though. Basically, it's saying that CER and DER are expected to grow rapidly in both markets. And as has been alluded to already as well, even since the review, we've had the battery incentive schemes launch in the NEM and WA. And now we've also had the Nelson review recommending greater integration of CER into the NEM. Realistically, this just serves to strengthen the view that there's a need for national alignment. So just a little bit about how we arrived at our conclusions and recommendations. Between March and July of this year, we held a series of interviews and conducted extensive desktop research to gather the information that fed into this report. Interviews were held with NEM and WEM market bodies, aggregators, consumers and industry groups, and the CER task force reference group and working group. While there were some divergent views in regards to the need for alignment, the reality is there was these were in the minority, and generally we could say there's consensus that there is a need and a benefit to alignment. Just moving to the next slide, just talking about the context for the roadmap. So I won't spend much time here either, but really this just highlights the opportunity. So, so the interviews definitely led us to the conclusion that yes, there is that opportunity for or need for alignment, but now we have an opportunity as well, because we've got two major programs of work across both markets that are just really in their infancy. So if we agree that it's true that there are opportunities for alignment, then really now is the time to take action on those opportunities. So as highlighted earlier, and by Mike in particular, Project Jupiter is a live integration market trial with 3 main work streams across technical, customer and value. Move on to the next slide. When we compare one on top of the other, the two programs of work, what we can see is that there's significant crossover in these work streams. Again, this really highlights that there is that opportunity and strengthens the case for alignment. So while on paper, there are, and as we'll see, there are some clear common areas and opportunities for alignment. The reality of the situation is it's not quite that simple, and we've tried to highlight this in the report. We're dealing with 2 distinct markets, grappling with similar issues but from different perspectives. On the one hand, we have a capacity market with a highly centralised governance model and a non-contestable small customer framework. On the other hand, we have a decentralised energy-only market operating across jurisdictions with multiple DNSPs and retailers. These differences ultimately lead to different needs in some respects and potentially different implementation pathways. That doesn't mean, though, there can't be shared learnings. Next slide, please. So this slide really, and look, this was not an easy chart to put together. It's taken as a snapshot from the research we did, and I wouldn't say everyone is 100% aligned on exactly where everything's up to, but it does give a good snapshot overview from the research we conducted generally of where the different components of CER and DER maturity are at in the different markets. The other thing to note here is that even though some things and a lot of things look like they line up nicely, the subcomponents that make up the overall high-level component will be at different stages of implementation across the markets. So it's really about giving just a general view here. We're not saying that for technical standards everything is equal across both markets, but there's certainly been good progress in both markets on a lot of these matters. And we can see clearly as well, though, that on some of them, there's been more progress in one market as opposed to the other. Move now into the opportunities for alignment and sort of the crux of the report. When we put all of that sort of background together, what we found, as we've said, is ultimately there are opportunities, and now we're trying to identify exactly what they are. And by comparing across the CER roadmap and the Project Jupiter, and also looking back to the DER roadmap to see where those various opportunities for alignment sit. The report splits these into 3 main themes. The first, you can see there, the models and frameworks that enable effective and scalable DER orchestration. We'll move on then to standards and data, and ultimately consumer issues such as consumer protection and social license. So on this slide here, what we found at a high level is that there are opportunities for both harmonisation and knowledge sharing, and I might just touch on that. So in the report, we identified a distinction, I guess, between knowledge sharing, so where information can flow one way, the other, or both ways, and harmonisation, where we think, and we've identified 3 opportunities for harmonisation, where we think there should actually be some more active integration across both markets. On this one as well, DSO works progress further in the WEM. We can see that sort of bar moves along a lot further out in the WEM than in the NEM, while market participation is better developed in the NEM. We did note in the report, though, that market differences do play a role in limiting the opportunities for harmonisation, particularly in this area. Move to the next slide. This slide gets a bit more into the detail of the subcomponents that make up the models and frameworks component overall. So we can see the first one there in embedding DSO, DMO roles we've identified as a harmonisation opportunity. We think that there's enough commonality, even with the differences in the markets, in the task ahead to really work together and embed that across Australia as a common, to give it the common roles and responsibilities to the DSO and DMO frameworks. Of course, we've seen WA, according to our report, especially that WA has moved further ahead in relation to assigning those roles and responsibilities. And that is a lot to do with the market structure as well, in that Western Power's the only real main candidate for DSO, whereas that's probably a bit more up in the air in the NEM, and so there's a broader piece of work happening over there. For other opportunities, look, the market structures again largely dictate that harmonisation is likely to be difficult, but there's still that ability to share knowledge one way or the other. And the arrows you can see there between either Project Jupiter as the little wavy line symbol and the NEM indicate the way we believe in the report that knowledge is most likely to flow. So example here, the number 6, the reference 6 there's been a lot of work happening in the NEM that can inform Project Jupiter, including the recent rule changes, IPRR and unlocking CR benefits. And also, look, we've got the AMC's pricing review as well, obviously underway. It's probably an example where there may be some things that can flow through to the WEM, but the transferability of any reforms there may be difficult because of the market structures and the distinctions there. Where we see information flowing the other way around the value stacking, and we've heard through the other 2 presentations, there's been a lot of work around creating that value stack for consumers, and that's something the NEM we're seeing is really struggling with. I'm not saying the WEM has it perfect either, but we just think they're further ahead on that journey. Move on to the next slide. This one really is probably the biggest or the most important area that we see. Standards and data really, really needs that level of harmonisation and collaboration, and also alignment across the WEM and the NEM. The reality there is that a lack of harmonisation in standards and data protocols, as well as in the implementation of those standards and protocols, is likely to lead to less competition and higher costs for consumers. We really think this will be exaggerated in the Swiss as well as the smaller market, particularly if it's not aligned to the NEM, but even more so, we think there's a case for international alignment, and we're starting to see that through CCIP Oz. Next slide. So this is obviously quite a large area with a lot of subcomponents, but we're really seeing 2 core opportunities, and those are highlighted as harmonisation opportunities, so numbers 8 and 9 there. and those are around those core standards for DER integration, namely again through CCPOS, but also and through its now battery extension, and through also work on the National Technical Regulator, and how there may be interactions there between Western Australia and the NEM. And the other one is around the public key infrastructure for cyber. Other opportunities in this space are less likely to be harmonised, at least through the life of Project Jupiter, but may be integrated in the future. And an example here is the DER Data Hub and data sharing and governance as a subject area, which we see is moving at faster pace in WA, with a large piece of work happening right now on appointing the DER data coordinator and standing up the data hub, or at least looking at how to update the DER register. And we see that moving faster, although the CR data exchange program of work is obviously happening. That's a stage behind where WA is at. But so learning's definitely there. We see flowing from WA to the NEM, but that doesn't mean that there can't be learnings the other way and that there can't be integration in the future or even harmonisation at some point down the road. To the next slide. So this one's now about consumer issues, and we've heard it said today as well that consumer issues are critically important, and to get the consumer protections right and the social license is critical for both the WA and the NEM. So while there are strong opportunities to share knowledge between markets in this space, and it's important that occurs, we did find though that the differences in market and consumer protection regimes will limit harmonisation opportunities. The next slide. So within the report, we found there's progress being made on consumer awareness in both markets, albeit through different mechanisms. In the NEM, awareness of VPPs in particular has been driven through retailers seeking a market advantage or a point of difference. Now, the CR roadmap is probably trying to address that again maybe through the AEMC's pricing review somewhat, and the products and services that can be offered. But in WA, even though we're seeing at the moment VPP awareness is more limited because it's been primarily driven through market trials, Project Jupiter has some work packages that are dedicated to actually achieving that level of consumer awareness. One of them being the social science report, and it's the work packages there around trying to help consumers understand the attributes of VPPs. Western Australia, we see generally more advanced, and again, we heard this earlier, around consumer protections through the Alternative Energy Services Framework, which provides a really flexible regime. And as Taryn mentioned, it's going through the codes that can be adopted in that framework. It can be adapted to meet particular needs. Again, both markets are really grappling with social license, and the imposition of emergency backstop mechanisms and export charges have eroded trust, and that's something that's got to be rebuilt. People need to see the value, which again ties back into so many of the other findings that we've heard today. Overall, working together on how to communicate the personal and system benefits of DER in a digestible way will benefit both markets. So we'd really like to see the transfer of knowledge in that regard. Moving on to the recommendations of the report. We found to implement the knowledge sharing and harmonisation opportunities that really there are three key recommendations to do so. Launch a harmonisation governance forum, activate collaboration charters, and align timelines to amplify impact. Now, what does all that mean? So while we've identified those opportunities for shared learnings and collaboration, nothing happens unless someone's driving it. So we really think there needs to be someone or a group that's given the responsibility to and accountability to actually drive these things forward. And that's what we're talking about with a harmonisation governance forum. We also think realistically this could be done through existing frameworks such as the National CER Roadmap or Working Group. And while WA is involved in a lot of those processes, we don't see it as having the formal responsibility to drive national collaboration, which I think is an outcome we should be working towards. As part of that, the group we think should be given sort of collaboration charters. So again, that responsibility and accountability for actually driving these things forward, particularly around those three harmonisation opportunities, but also more generally to activate knowledge sharing and collaboration across both markets, and making sure that future opportunities are really taken to bring the markets closer together, particularly where it will benefit consumers. And in that regard, we see a really big opportunity to align timelines between the projects. So where it's practical, we think that the work packages across both the CER roadmap and Project Jupiter should be more closely aligned to make sure that that knowledge sharing, collaboration, and harmonisation can occur, and that we're getting then to the same outcome in both markets at the same time. That's it from me. Thanks to everyone.
Thanks so much, Gary. Yeah, great overview, and there's a lot of detail in that report, and I'm sure we'll continue to digest and see where those harmonization opportunities present as we continue to move along both in the WEM and the NEM. Couple questions here. Let's see here. Let's see here. Yeah, interesting. If full retail contestability eventually happens in Western Australia, how does that impact the penetration of VPPs in the market? Interesting future pacing question there.
It is, and look, I think I'll start, and I'm not sure if Apple wants to jump in after me on this point. But look, we took this report from the point of view that FRC is not happening anytime soon in Western Australia, and so this is through Project Jupiter. I guess the status that we have is a single parent aggregator in Synergy and a single retailer for small customers. What we are seeing though is that the VPP market is being opened up to some competition, albeit still through Synergy as that parent aggregator. So getting almost, hesitate to use the term, but a hybrid model for VPP competition at least. I'm not sure I don't really want to get into the whole FRC debate for WA, but I'm not sure if Epwa wants to comment on that any further.
Hi, thanks, Gary. I guess, yes, we're not rushing towards FRC in WA. We're focused on a clean energy transition. We're quite comfortable with Synergy being the supplier to households and having households at the front of their mind. And the sole aggregator thing goes with that. But you're absolutely right. As part of Jupiter, we are creating the space, or we will create the space for private sector aggregators to access Synergy's non-contestable customer base. And same, obviously, in the contestable space. That's obviously a place where aggregators will be active too as part of Jupiter. Thanks.
Thanks, Taryn. Let's see here. Got another one here, kind of coming back to some of the NSS or non-network support service questions that came through earlier. But Andrew, are you able to quantify the NSS capacity in megawatts that Project Jupiter will be aiming for?
Yeah, sure. So notionally, we've set sort of a figure of about 10 megawatts at a substation level for Jupiter. And that 10 megawatts can be grid connected and customer aggregated. I think it's worthy of just highlighting Western Power's move towards embracing network support services as enabled by storage and orchestration. That's the big game changer for us. We in Symphony saw use of a community battery, which was 1 megawatt, as well as aggregated customer assets to take a lot of pressure off a feeder in Southern River. That proved to be successful. We did it side by side with augmentation, and every time we needed to deliver a service, we did it perfectly. I think there were 13 events in the last summer of Symphony and Encore, and we delivered that network support service, which just gives planners and operators of DNSP networks that confidence that this asset is firm, it's reliable, and can deliver that service. We then have 5 contracts, still 1 or 2 megawatts each as we build that capacity and capability. But we fully expect to go to market in the next few months for probably up to 20 further opportunities, feeder level opportunities in the distribution network. And each year, more and more DER is aggregated to deliver that service. And we really want to set the market up for success. So we might only need the service in year 2 or year 3, but year 1 is about recruitment, capability building, and still delivering a service. But to keep the lights on is more towards year 2 or year 3 of that service. We just think that creates the demand, creates the value, and sets the industry up to be successful collectively here in WA.
Thanks, Andrew. And just rapid fire, the last couple questions here, I'll take them in order of most upvoted. From Greg Williams, will the project include V to G? I saw one of the standards there, Gary, in your text stream, but is that part of the project? V to G integration.
Western Power to answer that.
Yeah, sure. So vehicle to grid will not be part of the scope of Jupiter. However, the ability to orchestrate electric vehicles is part of the design thinking of what we're building into the systems and integration of those systems. So we've got to be future DER ready. We still find, as Mike showed earlier, EV uptake is starting to come on board now in Western Australia, but vehicle to home, vehicle to grid, including the prevalence of that in functionality amongst a broad range of cars, as well as the standards. We feel Jupiter will be a close watcher of that, but will look at future-proofing the technology platforms to make sure that any and all DER can be orchestrated to the extent it wants to participate, and the owners of that DER want to participate.
Yeah, great way to finish there, Andrew. And I think it's really key to highlight that this is, the program's really creating that customer choice and preference. If people want to participate, they can. And again, it's, I think we're really trying to, in this project, educate what those opportunities are to get more value out of assets, and to also extend that, value onto the grid. So it's really about choice and preference. Well, I think we are at time for today. Again, just to big round of applause. Thank you so much to all the presenters. It's been really valuable to have everyone come in and share more about the project. And again, to answer any questions, please go and check out the project reports on Project Jupiter's page on ARENA's Knowledge Bank. There is a direct contact there to the project team. And so we'll let you enjoy those reports, and there'll be more to come as we go into milestone 2 of Project Jupiter. As part of our kind of knowledge sharing feedback, we always love to get your just to get your feedback on how to improve these kind of sessions and make sure that we're, to getting the right depth of knowledge to our key stakeholders. So please go ahead, scan your QR code, give us some feedback on how we can improve these sessions. Again, we're catering to a wide audience of different levels of understanding and subject matter expertise. So we do our best to provide enough context and enough depth to make sure that it covers off, but please do give us your feedback on how we can improve that. It only takes a couple minutes, or probably about 15 seconds really. So would love your feedback on there. And again, from the knowledge sharing team here at ARENA, thank you so much. If you have any questions directly to us, you can reach us out at knowledge@arena.gov.au. Thank you so much again. Much appreciated. And we'll see you guys soon.
Thanks for chairing, Maya.
Thank you.
Thank you.